हरे कृष्णा। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा. So we welcome you all to the third day of this course, Self-Evaluation Tools on the Path of Bhakti, Part 3. Actually, it's not the third day. We have already covered 12 plus 2, 14 days. This is the 15th day. But for the Part 3, this is the third day. So we have been discussing from this book, Madhurya Kadambini. We are in the third shower of nectar, Tritiya Amrita Vrishti. And in that we have been discussing the stages in nullification of anarthas. Yesterday we saw there is Ekadesha Vartini, Bahudesha Vartini, Prayiki, Purna and Atyantiki, these 5 different stages. Ekadesha Vartini is one or two anarthas, Bahudesha Vartini is many anarthas are destroyed, and Prayiki is almost all the anarthas are destroyed, and Purna is all the anarthas are destroyed, and at the stage of Atyantiki it is absolute destruction. So that is described, and we saw these 4 kinds of anarthas: Dushkritotta, Sukritotta, Aparadhotta and Bhaktiotta anarthas. At what stages, how they gradually get destroyed. We discussed this theme yesterday. And we also saw the special cases of Chitraketu Maharaj and the 4, and Jaya and Vijaya's case, how at the stage of after becoming a personal associate of the Supreme Lord, one can actually never commit an offense or be troubled by any of these anarthas that we have seen. So this is where we ended our discussion yesterday. So today we will continue our discussion. Few more themes before we complete this chapter, but very, very vital themes. And the first of which is that the holy name and Bhakti Devi, even though they are powerful, they are not obliged to respond to an offender. This is a very important theme that we are going to discuss, because based on many personal observations, we can see some of the statements of the Shastras seemingly are not true. Therefore, people may say, I will give some examples. Actually, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives some examples, and we will see how we should understand these. So, one may raise this objection that you are telling that the destruction of anarthas is gradual. It is mentioned Ekadesha Vartini, Bahudesha Vartini, Prayiki, Purna and Atyantiki. But is this really true for devotees? The Shastra says, Shvadopi Sadyah Savanaya Kalpate. Even a dog eater immediately becomes qualified for performing Brahminical sacrifices. So is it really applicable for devotees? For devotees, is it not instantaneous? So he says, so they may quote many other verses are there in the Shastras also. This is one verse from the Nama Kaumudi section of the Padyavali. So where he says, this is a beautiful verse, Amhaha Samharad Akilam Sakrududaya Deva Sakala Lokasya Taranir Iva Timira Jaladim Jayati Jagan Mangalam Harer Nama. This is a glorification of the holy name. It says, Tarani means the sun. Taranir Iva, just like the sun, Udayadeva Samharad, as soon as it comes out, as soon as it rises, immediately it destroys Sakala Lokasya Amhaha. So Amhaha can mean darkness, and Amhaha can mean sins also. So he says, just as the sun, as soon as it rises up, as soon as the rising of the sun, along with the rising of the sun, immediately the darkness of the world is destroyed. Which is Timira Jaladim, which is deep like an ocean. Similarly, Harer Nama, the holy name of the Lord, Sakradudayad, just when once chanted, Sakala Lokasya Amhaha Samharad, it destroys the sins of this whole world. Jayati Jagan Mangalam Harer Nama. In this way, all glories to the holy name, which is the true auspiciousness to this whole world, or which bestows true auspiciousness to this whole world. So in this way, this verse indicates that Sakradudaya Deva, just by once chanting the holy name, all the sinful reactions are destroyed. But here you are telling Ekadeshavartini, Bahudeshavartini, Prayiki, Purna, Atyantiki, and this goes from Bhajana Kriya to Anarthanavritti to Nishtha to Ruchi to Asakti to Bhava to Prema to becoming a personal associate of the Lord. What do you mean? Are you serious? But these verses indicate that immediately it destroys. And the 6th canto of Bhagavatam says, Yan nama sakrit shravanat pukkashopi vimuchyate samsarat. If even a Chandala even once hears the holy name of the Lord, he immediately becomes free to, he immediately becomes ready for liberation from samsara. Pukkashopi vimuchyate samsarat. So in this way, the scriptures clearly say that there is no gradual destruction of anarthas, but it is immediate destruction. But in actual life, as practicing devotees, have we realized these two statements? We have chanted not one holy name, we have not heard one holy name, we have chanted millions of names and heard millions of names, heard millions of Krishna Katha, but still, can we confidently say that Anartha Nivritti is Atyantiki? All the anarthas have been destroyed with the first hearing or first chanting of the holy name. So it is contrary to our personal observation also, and it is so therefore, how do we understand this? We can say that definitely some of the bad habits I have overcome. Many of the unfavorable desires I have overcome. But to say that my heart is completely free of any material desires, lust, anger, envy, greed, illusion and pride, I cannot say that. But I have chanted so many holy names, I have heard so many holy names. So then are these statements mere exaggerations of the holy name? Oh, someone may say, yes, look, the holy name is certainly potent, but it is potent at this level. But the Shastras glorify as if the holy name is this much potent, so that people will get attracted. If you say that the holy name is only so much potent, then no one will get attracted to the holy name. So therefore the Shastras exaggerate the glorification of the holy name. Someone may feel like that. Even we may feel like that. Let us be honest. Even we may feel that the glorification of the holy name given in the Shastras are exaggerations, because we have not seen such transformations in our heart. So how do we understand this? Is it really Ekadeshavartini, Bahudeshavartini, Prayiki, Purna and Atyantiki, or is it that Sakrit Shravanat, Yannama Sakrit Shravanat, Pukkashopi Vimuchyate Samsarat? What is true and what is wrong? So, or one may even quote Ajamila's case from the Shastras, and they say, look, Ajamil uttered the holy name just once in Namabhas without anarthas, but without aparad, and all the anarthas were destroyed immediately, and he attained the lotus feet of the Lord. So people may quote these verses and these episodes to indicate that, oh, is it really gradual destruction, or is it at once? The Shastras seem to indicate it's at once. Personal experience says it is gradual, and here Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also seems to indicate that it is gradual only. then how can we understand these Shastric statements which indicate Sadyah, immediate? So he says, one should have no doubt that the holy name has in all cases such inestimable power. One should not doubt the power of the holy name. The holy name, if it wants, in one moment can extinguish the sinful tendencies of this whole world and give liberation to every single person in one moment, just by one chanting of the holy name of one person. The holy name is capable. However, the holy name, being unhappy with the offenses committed against it, does not manifest its power to the offender. So, just like you may have the most richest person, Bill Gates or Mukesh Ambani. He is a multi-billionaire, trillionaires, all these people, such people. And they may have thousands of servants. And there could be one personal servant who is trying to marry off his daughter. So he needs some 4-5 lakhs money to actually arrange for the marriage. So if he goes and asks Mr. Ambani or Bill Gates, and let's say this person, the last 1 month or so, he has been very offensive. He has been audibly criticizing Ambani, and he has not been serving properly. But still, he didn't, but still he was kept. And now he goes and asks, give me 5 lakhs for my daughter's marriage. Is Mukesh Ambani obliged to give him that money? So if this person says, if Mukesh Ambani says, no, I cannot give, then is it reasonable if this person says, I thought he was a millionaire or billionaire or trillionaire. This is all exaggeration. He does not even have 5 lakhs money to give me. You cannot say that, because even though he has trillions of dollars, it is real. But he is not obliged to give even a small token amount of money to a servant who is very offensive towards him. So similarly, the holy name has all the powers, but to an offending person, the holy name is not obliged to respond. So in that way, all the glorifications of the holy name are not at all an exaggeration, they are absolutely true. But the holy name is not obliged. It has all the powers, but it will wait till our offensive attitude goes away in order to respond. That's what is indicated here. This is indeed the reason sinful tendencies continue in the offender. Still, the servants of death have no power to attack such a person. Even though one may be chanting with offenses, the holy name will not give Krishna prema, but still such an offensive name can protect that person from the Yamadutas. So that is what we see in the case of Ajamil. So when Ajamil chanted the holy name, he didn't chant the holy name, he called for his son Narayan, and he was such a sinful person. So when he chanted the holy name, simultaneously the Yamadutas and Vishnudutas came. Even though the Vishnudutas had every reason to take Ajamil to the hellish planets, but the Vishnudutas came and stopped the Yamadutas. But at the end of this whole episode, after this conversation between Yamadutas and Vishnudutas happened, and then with great disappointment the Yamadutas go back empty-handed for the first time, and the Vishnudutas also go back empty-handed. Ajamil does not immediately go to Vaikuntha. If you have read the 6th canto carefully, after this whole conversation, both the Yamadutas and Vishnudutas go back to their respective abodes empty-handed. And Ajamil, being purified by the association of the Vishnudutas, having heard pure Krishna Katha, pure glorification of the holy name from the mouths of these pure devotees, the Vishnudutas, he actually goes to Haridwar and performs intense devotional service for 12 years, and after 12 years he perfects his life and then go back to Vaikuntha. So therefore, Ajamil was protected by the offensive chanting of the holy name. Ajamil was protected from the Yamadutas, but he still was not given Krishna Prem immediately. He had to earn it by sincere practice of bhakti. So that's what the sixth canto says. Sakranmana Krishna Padara Vindayor Niveshitam Tad Gunaragi Yairiha Nateyam Ampasha Bhritascha Tad Batan Swapne Pipashyanti Hi Chirna Nishkritaha. He says, Sakrit Manak Krishna Padara Vindayor. Even once when a person absorbs his mind meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna, Swapne api, even in dreams, what to speak of when awake. Tad gunaragi, and his attraction may not be pure attraction to Krishna. While meditating on the form of Krishna, he may simultaneously be meditating on eating some ice cream or something like that, some material desire also. Tad gunaragi. The mind is not pure. The mind is parallelly meditating on some sense gratification, and at the same time it is thinking, oh, today the darshan in the temple was so beautiful. Radha Gopinath ji was so wonderfully dressed. He may be thinking like that while thinking, oh, I wish at home I had masala dosa for breakfast. Like that he is thinking. So he is thinking of Krishna but not with pure mind. So even if one may think about Krishna with an impure mind, and swapnepi pashyanti hi chirna nishkrita. He says, nate yamam pasha bhritascha tadbatam swapnepi pashyanti. And such a person, even in his dream, will not have to see the Yamadutas, because the Yamadutas will not come and catch them. So, offensive chanting of the holy name, even if chanted with offenses, gives some minimal benefit. What is that benefit? You won't have to go to hell and suffer. Is that a minimal benefit? For devotee it is a minimal benefit, but for an ordinary person, that is the ultimate benefit. I will never ever have to go to Naraka and suffer. So the Yamadutas had to go back empty handed, but still the holy name did not give Krishna Prem to Ajamil immediately. He had to earn it after practicing Krishna consciousness for at least 12 years. And therefore the Shastras say, Namno balad yasya hi papa buddhi navidyate tasya yamair hi shuddhi. They may be freed from the Yamapash, but they cannot be freed from the aparad. That's what this mentioned. Namno balad yasya hi papa buddhi. This is the seventh offense. Committing sinful activities on the strength of the holy name. Oh, the holy name is so powerful. It can destroy mountains of sinful activities, of even future sinful activities. One holy name is capable of destroying the sins committed in thousands of lifetimes. So if the holy name is so powerful, I am chanting 16 rounds. So why do I have to worry about committing sins? I can live the way I like. Eat, drink and make merry and chant the holy name also. Like that one may think. So if one commits sinful activities because he thinks that the holy name will take care of him, that is an offense. And he says, Navidyate tasya yamair hi shuddhi. Nothing, no process of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara or the jnana yoga or karma yoga, nothing can save him. Nothing can purify him. He can never get Krishna Prem, the goal of life. Okay. In other words, even though the aparadi is free from Yamaraj, but he cannot be freed from the aparad, from the offense or the anartha, the unwanted desire which is created due to performing that aparada. So therefore, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the same example. Just like an offender, the case of an offender losing the mercy of the name is similar to a subordinate who is offensive to his vastly wealthy and capable master, which is the holy name. So, a very wealthy and capable master may be there, he can give actually crores of rupees, but he is not obliged to give to a person who is offending him. Similarly, the holy name is vastly capable. Namna Makari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shakti. All the potencies of Krishna are invested in the holy name. Not one or two or a few or many, but all. Whatever Krishna can give, the holy name can give. And what Krishna can give is literally anything that one can imagine and beyond one's imagination also. But the holy name is not obliged. He is denied proper care and is treated indifferently by the master. So, if one offends the holy name by committing these 10 offenses, then the holy name neglects such a person. As a result, that person comes to suffer poverty and distresses of all sorts. It should be known that a master neglects a servant who is offensive and no one is capable of helping him, including karma, jnana or yoga. That's why he says, Navidyate tasya yamair hi shuddhi. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, or jnana yoga, the various limbs of jnana yoga, the various limbs of karma yoga. No one can save him from that offense. He has to take sincere shelter of the holy name and repent for his offenses, and then the offenses will go away. If the offending servant again puts himself at the beck and call of his master, if he again gives up his offensive mentality and becomes completely subservient to the master, then the master gradually shows mercy. Because he will see for some time, is he really repentant or is it just a show? So the master will carefully observe that person for some time, and then step by step he will start showing mercy. He will not immediately show that mercy completely. In the same way, the offending devotee will at first suffer some miseries. As he performs sincere service, initially he will suffer the misery of committing the offense. But slowly when he puts himself into sincere service, the name will gradually start manifesting mercy, and gradually his evil tendencies will be eliminated. Thus, one cannot say that the offenses are not gradually eliminated, but they are at once eliminated. They are actually gradually eliminated only, because the holy name will have to ensure that the offensive mentality is completely gone. So slowly, to the extent one gives up the offensive mentality, to that extent the holy name will slowly start releasing mercy. So therefore, it is not contradictory. Therefore, these two presentations, where the Shastras say one chanting of the holy name immediately destroys all the evil tendencies, and on the other hand, here Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is telling Ekadesha Vartini, Bahudesha Vartini, gradual destruction. There is no contradiction here, and this is how the contradiction is resolved. So this is the next theme that we discussed, that the gradual destruction of anarthas is actually real, because the holy name is not obliged to respond to an offensive practitioner. Very important theme. So therefore it is very important that we try our level best to give up these 10 offenses. In order to give up these 10 offenses, first we have to know what these 10 offenses are and what does it mean to commit these 10 offenses, how we can overcome the tendency to commit these 10 offenses, and if the 10 offenses have been committed, then how we can rectify the mistake. All of that needs to be carefully understood and practiced, so that we make rapid progress towards our goal of establishing a relationship with Krishna. Now, someone may say, you know what, I don't ever remember committing an offense. In my whole life, I have never offended anyone, including an ant. That is reality. Look, I am with all the humility at my disposal, I am telling this that I have never ever offended anyone. So one may say like that. So if that is reality, then the Shastras say the symptom of such a person is tadashmasaram hridayam batedam yad grahyamaner harinama deyaihi na vikriyeta tayada vikaro netre jalam gatra ruheshu harshah. If one says that I have never ever offended anyone, if that is true, then the moment he chants the holy name, tears of love and affection will flow from his eyes, his hairs will stand on end, his voice will get choked up in great emotion, and all the Ashtasatvika Vikaras, the 8 symptoms of ecstatic love, bhava, will manifest in his heart. If tears are flowing from our eyes, not because of ecstasy, but because we say, oh, it is 10 p.m. at night and I still have my 16 rounds left, and if it out of great desperation and disappointment, if tears flow, that is not a symptom of offenseless chanting. So therefore, he says, even though offense may not have been done recently, it may have been done in the past, but one can infer the existence of their effect, existence of the offense by its effect. What is the effect of presence of offense? There are two effects. One is sinful tendencies may still persist, and second, the symptoms of bhava, the Ashtasatvika Vikaras, will not manifest when he is engaged in some devotional activity. The symptoms of prema will not manifest. So therefore, one should not say that one has never committed an offense. The symptom of the offense is twofold: presence of current sinful tendencies, and second, absence of the ecstatic symptoms of love for Krishna. Then one may say, you are talking too much about these offenses. Are the offenses so powerful that it can destroy the creeper of my bhakti? Is it real that the offenses can completely uproot my bhakti? Is it true? Or does it just cover the bhakti little bit, just like a cloud, but after some time the cloud will automatically go away? Is it like that? Because you have heard both these cases. We have heard that offenses uproot bhakti. We have also heard that offenses do not uproot, but it just covers the bhakti. What is reality? So, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami quotes this verse from one of the Puranas. Kete aparada viprendra namno bhagavata kritah vinignanti nranam krityam prakritam hyanayantihi. He says, O Viprendra, O foremost of Brahmanas, Kete Bhagavatah Namno Aparadaha. What are these offenses towards the holy name of the Lord? Vinignanti Nrinam Krityam, which have the potency to cancel the effects of all sincere devotional service performed by the devotee. Prakritam hi anayantihi, and make him just like an ordinary materialistic person. So this is a verse that Srila Rupa Goswami quotes from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He says, what are those offenses which have the potency to completely destroy all of one's devotional credits and make him completely into a materialist? Can a devotee ever, who has practiced bhakti, who has reaped some of the fruits of bhakti, is it ever possible that he will completely give up bhakti and become a materialist? Is it possible? The answer is generally not, but if he commits an offense, it could be a different case. Let's see what it means. In other words, repeatedly hearing and chanting the Lord's name should give prema. Serving the sacred tirthas should bestow perfection. tasting repeatedly the prasadam offered to the Lord should destroy all desires for sense enjoyment. So these are all limbs of bhakti. So by performing these bhakti, one should naturally get the benefit of all that. So are the offenses so grave that they can cancel all these effects of hearing the holy name, chanting the holy name, honoring the Lord's prasada? So are the offenses so potent that they can cancel even the effects of bhakti? This very startling and unnerving question is being raised. It is unnerving, it's so scary. If this is so, does it follow that a person who commits a namaparad becomes averse to the Lord and thus cannot even take shelter of a guru or perform devotional activities? Is it possible? In real life also, we all have seen, or some of us might have seen, true cases of people who actually become atheistically disposed towards Krishna and very inimically disposed towards his own guru because of committing offenses. So we will not dissect and perform a post-mortem of some case studies. That is none of our business, it is Krishna's business. We don't want to do that. But the fact is that it is reality. Devotees who have spent sufficient time in Krishna consciousness might have observed people drift away from Krishna consciousness due to developing severe negativity towards devotees, offending the devotees, and eventually they become offensive to the process of devotional service also. And they become offensive to the guru also, like that. So, is this really true? Srila Vishnacharya Thakur says, this is true. As during a serious fever, when one has some serious fever, malaria or something like that, one loses taste for food. And it is so nauseating that he can't eat. He is feeling hungry, but there is severe nausea. I remember once I was admitted in our Bhaktivedanta hospital for malaria. I was feeling severe hunger. I was feeling famished. I had not eaten for a long time. But as soon as food came, prasadam came, it was so nauseating. I could not eat. I felt like vomiting. It was a very difficult situation. So, here Srila Vishnacharya Thakur gives the same example here. He says, just like a person with some severe fever, he loses all taste for food and he finds it impossible to eat. So similarly, a person who commits an offense loses all taste for performing any devotional activity. Rather, he may even become inimically disposed towards all these devotional activities. But slowly, if he starts giving up his offensive mentality, then slowly the fever might lessen. And when the fever lessens, slowly he may start getting some taste back. So even then, nourishing foods like milk and rice cannot give their full power of nourishment. He can't take difficult to digest food like milk, rice, etc. He has to eat something like, they call it kanji, or something very, very easy and easy to digest, like fruits, like that, which are very, very easy to digest. He has to take such food. He can't take very difficult to digest foods like milk or sweet rice and things like that. That is not possible. So similarly, people who have left Krishna consciousness due to committing severe offenses, even when they start coming back, they can't immediately take up to the core practices of devotional service. I have some acquaintances, after having practiced, one of them actually, after having practiced bhakti very sincerely for a very long time, due to probably offensive mentality, eventually became very inimically disposed towards the devotees and the Supreme Lord also. But over a period of time, gradually when the offensive mentality was given up, then the person still does not take up to the core practices of devotion. One may get attracted to the peripheral activities. Like the person may think that, oh, I can go to Govindas and have some, I will have my dinner at Govindas. So, not because in Govindas they serve prasadam, but because good vegetarian food is available there, like that. So, in that way he may get attracted to some of the peripheral aspects of Krishna consciousness, but it will still take a long time for him to regain back that original nourishment that he felt years or sometimes even decades back while practicing Krishna consciousness. So they bestow some benefit but cannot relieve him of his wasted condition. So whatever is wasted condition is wasted. It cannot be reversed immediately. It takes its own time. So what can work? An invalid's diet and medicine can, however, with time restore him to his previously healthy condition. So the invalid's diet, which means a very, very easy to digest thing, like friendship with another devotee, who may not necessarily speak about Krishna consciousness. He will just be a nice friend and he will give him some nice food, which is prasadam. These are all peripheral activities. He may get first attracted to those things. Then slowly, slowly he will develop taste for the more and more core activities of Krishna consciousness. At that time, the full potency of normal food can be utilized by the body. In the same way, after a long period of suffering, the effect of aparad, it does not immediately get reversed. Oh, now I will repent. So with repentance, immediately it does not go away. If serious offenses we have committed over a long period of time, so one will have to suffer for a long period for the effect of offenses, and then slowly but steadily the intensity of that aparad starts reducing in that person. Then slowly then he becomes qualified for bhakti again, which means he starts with adau shraddha, tata sadhu sangha, ata bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti, nishta, ruchi, asakti, bhava and prema. So slowly he has to start from the beginning again. So it does not immediately get reinstated immediately. So repeated doses of hearing and chanting the Lord's name and performance of the other devotional activities gradually reinstates that person back into devotional service. So one may say, oh, this indicates that offenses only cover bhakti, it does not destroy. So he says, okay, what is the meaning of this gradual reinstatement? Vishwanath Thakur says, adau shraddha, tata sadhu sangha, ata bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti, nishta, ruchi, asakti, bhava, prema. So this is literally beginning only. He is starting from scratch. So he is starting from shraddha, then sadhu sangha, then bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti. Everything is starting from scratch. So we may want to call it covered, we may want to call it destroyed. But whatever it is, the hard work is hard work. The person may have reached till, may have practiced 10 years, 15 years of devotional service, but still he has to start from scratch. So how is that covering? It is actually in one sense destroyed. So this is exactly what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions in the Madhya Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says, he compares this, especially this Vaishnava aparad, to Hathi Mata. Yadi Vaishnava aparada utte Hathi Mata, upade va chindeta rasukiyaya pata. He says, when this, he compares this Vaishnava aparad to a mad elephant. So when the mad elephant enters into a field of rice, let's say, actually there is a very beautiful farm near Belgaum. It's called as Gokul Dham. So in Gokul Dham, devotees stay. It's a very beautiful farm, but absolutely no electricity. It is completely cut off from the grid, and there is a very wonderful exhibition of simple living, high thinking there, and it is in the middle of a forest actually. It's and actually mad elephants do come, huge elephants, and they used to every year have sow their, they used to cultivate rice, and for 2 or 3 consecutive years these elephants would come and completely destroy that whole cultivation. So destroy means what? It's not that after the elephants have done their job, you can go and do some slight adjustment and then it will start growing again. No. You have to wait till the next year sowing season and then you have to sow. What has been destroyed is destroyed. You cannot get a single grain from that at all. And eventually they stopped actually sowing, because every year the elephants would come and do some tamasha there. So mad elephant literally destroys the creeper of bhakti. Upadeva chinde tara suki yaya pata. He says, the mad elephant that uproots the creeper and breaks it. So uproot and break means what? Can you put it back and then it will start growing again? No. We have to again sow the seed. It will become a seedling, then it will become a sapling. After it becomes a sapling, then we can plant it again, and then it will slowly start growing. So actually Vishnu Chakrathakur says, committing these offenses regularly over a prolonged period of time actually literally uproots the creeper of bhakti, and again the seed of Shraddha have to be sown. Again his taking up to bhakti depends on some Vaishnava approaching him and giving him an opportunity for some Agyata Sukriti, and then the Agyata Sukriti has to build, then it has to become Shraddha, then it has to become Sadhu Sangha, then Bhajana Kriya, then Anarthana Vritti, then so on. So it takes the whole thing again. And Prabhupada in his purport, he writes, however, if one thinks that he has become very mature and he can live separate from the association of Vaishnavas, and thus gives up all the regulative principles due to offending a Vaishnava, one's position becomes very dangerous. Which means, as soon as one starts offending Vaishnavas, slowly sinful desires will start manifesting within the heart. That is why we already discussed this once. Many times it happens that, we have been nicely practicing bhakti for a while, and then many sinful desires which we had in the past, they get destroyed. And suddenly after a few years, we start getting some sinful desires which did not even exist even before we started practicing Krishna consciousness. And we are wondering, what's happening? Where is this desire coming from? If we probe, then such desires are probably coming because we have started becoming offensive towards Vaishnavas, especially Vaishnavas. And then very soon that person may start giving up his regulative principles, 4 regulative principles. So which means he may get attracted to illicit sex, meat eating, or intoxication, or gambling. And as Prabhupada says, it uproots and breaks it into pieces. Such an offense, Prabhupada says, is especially created when one disobeys the orders of his spiritual master. This is called as Guror Avagya. The devotee must therefore be very careful not to commit the offenses against the spiritual master. As soon as one deviates from the instructions of the spiritual master, Prabhupada says, the uprooting of the Bhakti Lata begins at that moment only. And it is only a question of time before it is completely uprooted. Then in the next verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Tate mali yatna kari kare avaran aparada hastira yaiche nahaye udgama. The gardener must carefully defend the creeper by fencing it all around so that the powerful elephant of offenses may not enter. We should be very careful. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport, I will not read the whole purport, but he says the main reason for such offensive mentality, Prabhupada clearly states, when one associates with non-devotees, the maddened elephant is set loose. So when we are indiscriminate in associating with non-devotees, which means basically indiscriminate hearing and reading from the internet, then very soon we will start offending the devotees. Therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Asatsanga Tyaga Ei Vaishnava Achar. The real symptom of a Vaishnava is that he very carefully gives up non-devotional association. But a so-called mature devotee may also commit a great offense by if he gives up the association of pure devotees. Therefore, he says, by contacting non-devotees and engaging in non-devotional activities, a so-called mature devotee will fall victim to the mad elephant offense of offending Vaishnavas. Whatever growth has taken place is quickly uprooted by such an offense. So Prabhupada clearly indicates that it is uprooted completely. One should therefore be very careful to defend the creeper by fencing it, that is by following the regulative principles and associating with pure devotees. So loving association of devotees can help us overcome this, and by non-devotees association we become very much vulnerable and prone to committing this mad elephant offense. So therefore, can offenses actually destroy one's creeper of bhakti? Yes, that is what here in this is one of the last themes that is discussed here by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Then a very important theme that he discusses next is, someone may say that yes, you have mentioned two symptoms of committing namaparad, which is sinful tendencies are seen and he may not manifest the symptoms of prema or bhava. Ecstatic symptoms are not seen in them. But someone may say, no, not just that. Such a person, his suffering due to his prarabdha karma does not end. Someone may say like that. Till you reach the stage of bhava, a devotee is suffering due to his prarabdha karma. That is what he may say. So, but one may say, no, this is not, is this really true that a devotee's suffering is given due to prarabdha karma? So, he says, he gives the two examples. Ajamil, when he chanted the name of his son, it is indicated that he chanted in an inoffensive manner. Bhagavatam says, the acharyas indicate that there was no nama aparad there, it was nama abhas chanting. But still, he did not manifest symptoms of prema. And he was also having sinful inclinations. And if you see the case of Yudhishthir Maharaj had the personal association of the Supreme Lord, and therefore he was certainly free of past karmic reactions. But still, if you observe Yudhishthir Maharaj, he underwent many sufferings. He was put into so much, the Pandavas were tortured by the Kauravas. They had to undergo a lot of miserable situations in their life. So how would you explain this? Is the suffering of a devotee due to his prarabdha karma? Or why do devotees suffer? So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions here, as a tree bears fruit only in the proper season. So, it's not like in the winter season or in the rainy season. So, someone comes and he say, oh, what are the trees that you have? Oh, we have mango trees. So, the person may say, oh, come, let's go and eat mangoes. No, this is not the season for mangoes. But you said that you have mango trees. So mango trees means they should give mangoes. So if a tree is not giving mango trees, Is it really a mango tree? He said, yes, Baba, it gives mangoes, but only during the right season. During summer it will give mangoes. But if you want mangoes during off season, during winter or monsoon, how can you get? So the same way, just as a tree bears fruit only in the proper season, the holy name, even though may be pleased with an offenseless person, it will reveal its mercy to him only in due course of time and not immediately. Then Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes a very important point here. Please hear carefully. For a devotee, accumulated sins committed due to previous bad habits have no effect like the bite of a serpent with his poisoned fangs. This we have already seen. For a devotee, his suffering is not due to his prarabdha karma. The sickness, lamentation and other sufferings undergone by the devotees are not reactions to sin in his previous life. So devotees means he is not talking about just pure devotees. He is discussing anartha nivritti only right now. So even devotees who may be suffering due to their anarthas, even their suffering or sickness or lamentation, it is not due to their prarabdha karma. Then what is the reason for their suffering? So the Lord has said, Nirdanatva Maharogo Mad Anugraha Lakshanam. The awesome affliction known as poverty, Nirdanatva Maharogo, poverty which is compared to a great roga, great disease. He says, Mad Anugraha Lakshanam. When you see my devotees are afflicted by that Maharoga of Nirdanatva, of poverty, then you should understand that I am showing some personal mercy towards them. So, Krishna also says in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Yasyaham anugrinami harishyetad dhanam shanaihi tato adanam tyajantyasya swajana dukkha dukkitam. He says, Yasya aham anugrinami. If I desire to show some special mercy, anugraha towards someone, harishyetad dhanam shanaihi. Gradually I take away all his money, all his wealth. Tato, thereafter, adanam tyajantyasya swajana. Asya swajana, his relatives and friends, asya tyajanti, they will give him up. Why? Because he is no longer has money. Dukkha dukkitam. In this way he will become one suffering after another. Dukkha dukkitam. So why do I do this to my devotee? So that he will take full shelter of me and quickly attain everlasting joy. So therefore he says, sometimes my mercy to my devotee is shown through the process of giving him some suffering, like that he indicates. So a beautiful purport is written to this particular verse by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So we will take some time to understand this purport, and this will throw a wonderful light on this theme of how devotees' suffering is not due to their prarabdha karma, but it is personally given by Krishna to make that devotee quickly come towards his lotus feet. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, a man suffers misery because of loss of wealth. He suffers further because of rejection by his relatives because he is poor. Tato adanam tyajantyasya swajana dukkha dukkitam. So the relatives reject him because he has become poor now. They cannot get any material benefit from this person. This suffering being given by the Lord is not the result of karma. Even the happiness given to the Lord's devotees is not the result of karma, but rather unrequested result of bhakti. So we saw that how bhakti gives kleshagni and shubhada. So shubhada also indicates sukha pradatvam. So neither is the suffering undergone by a devotee due to his prarabdha karma, nor is the happiness experienced by the devotee due to his prarabdha karma. His suffering is personally given by the Lord, and his happiness is also personally given by the Lord as a result of his practice of bhakti. The happiness and distress which appear to be prarabdha karma are given by the Lord himself. The Shrutis say, Bhavad Utta Shubha Ashubhayoho. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 87th chapter, 40th verse indicates this. Bhavad Utta Shubha Ashubhayoho. So, the devotees say, my dear Lord, these are auspicious and inauspicious situations created by you personally. When a person realizes you, he no longer cares about his good and bad fortune arising from pious and sinful activities. Since it is you alone who control this good and bad fortune, he sees Krishna's hands. He sees Krishna's hands. But one may say, how can the Lord, who is so affectionate to his devotee, make him suffer? ठीक है, समझ रहे हैं कि we understand that it is only the Supreme Lord who is giving him suffering. But Supreme Lord has some affection for his devotee or not? Why is he giving him suffering? He says, the father, even though affectionate to his sons, gives them the austerity of studying by taking away their sources of enjoyment. So the father may come, take away the smartphone from his son, and he says, study. The son should not think, what kind of a sadist is my father that he does not want my enjoyment. No, the father is not a sadist. The father wants the genuine improvement of his son. The father knows that the action is a sign of his affection, even though the son does not appreciate it at that time. The son will not appreciate it at that time, but in retrospect, about 10 years later, he will say, thank you, my dear father. Good, you protected me from getting distracted. Otherwise, my career would have been a disaster. If you had not done it during those days, my career would have been a disaster. So a devotee, so many times in our own lives, we see things which seem to be unfortunate, but after some years we realize, or sometimes it may be after a few months or a few days, we realize, oh, it was not actually unfortunate, it was actually very good. So there is a nice story to illustrate this point. Once in China, this is a real story. Once in China, there was a farmer. Just like we use, of course, in today's day and age, we use tractors to cultivate our ground. But at least in traditional Vedic days, and even now, in many places, they use cows to cultivate their land. Similarly, in China, they used to use horses to cultivate their field. So once upon a time, this farmer had a very wonderful horse, the best of all the horses, very nicely tamed by him. So every year this farmer used to have bumper harvest because the horse used to very nicely till the land and take care of the land. So all the villagers would come and tell, oh, you are so fortunate. You have such a wonderful fortune of having this horse. But this farmer used to say, fortune or misfortune, who knows? They used to get bewildered. What's wrong with this person? He has such a wonderful horse, which is such a wonderful fortune. Why is he speaking like this? So they would go back. One day, this horse ran away into the forest. So he had no horse to cultivate. And that particular year, his crops failed. So all the villagers came and told, oh, how unfortunate, you have lost your horse. So So the farmer said, fortune or misfortune, who knows? So they said, what is wrong with him? It is such a misfortune. He had such a failure of crops. It is such a misfortunate thing. Why is he telling like this? Then they go away. Then after a few days, this one horse it went into the forest and attracted another female horse, and two horses came. So now they had two horses and they could till their land still faster. So all of them came and told, how fortunate. You lost one horse, but now you have two horses. And he told the same answer, fortune or misfortune, who knows? They go away. So the farmer's son, he was trying to tame this second horse which had come, but it was very rude, and in trying to tame that horse, one day that horse threw away that son in air, and he fell down and broke his leg. And all the villagers came and they told, oh, how unfortunate that your son has broken his leg. Farmer said, fortune or misfortune, who knows? So they were bewildered again. They went back, and within a few days, China started waging a battle with some other country. And immediately because they were running short of soldiers, it was a huge war. So they came and drafted all the young men from that village into military, into their defense. Because this person's son's, his leg was broken, this farmer's son's leg was broken, they did not draft him. And whoever got drafted from that village, they all died in the battle. And all the farmers, they came and told, yes, now we understand, fortune or misfortune, actually we cannot understand. So, but a devotee has to have trust in the hands of Krishna. He has to have trust in the benevolence of Krishna. He has to have trust in the potency of Krishna. He has to have trust in the omnipotence, omnibenevolence and omniscience of Krishna. Krishna knows what I am going through. Krishna has potential to convert this situation, and Krishna is my most well-wishing friend who wants to always protect me and do good to me. So a devotee has this trust in Krishna's benevolence. So when he has this trust, then he can actually live a peaceful life. Therefore Prabhupada says the peace formula, Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvalokam Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati. Like that. So therefore here Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives this example, just like a father knows that the action is a sign of his affection, even though the son does not appreciate it at that time. So similarly, we may be put into difficult situations and we may not appreciate it right now. But in a few days or weeks or months or sometimes years, we realize that was the best position that I could have ever been in. If I would not have been in that position, I would have missed out such a big treasure. Many times in retrospect, we appreciate Krishna. We all can pause for a second and think. We all have this experience in our life. What we once saw as a great misfortune turned out to be actually the greatest fortune. Therefore, Krishna knows what he is doing. We just have to trust in Krishna's benevolence, that's all. Even though experiencing happiness or suffering arising from karma, a person still maintains this as the So he says that even though the experiencing happiness or suffering arising from karma, a person still maintains the seed of, I am sorry, there is some mistake here in the, so anyway we have crossed the time. So we will continue this discussion tomorrow But this is a very important discussion, very interesting discussion. So we'll continue this discussion tomorrow. I will rectify my slides and then we can continue this discussion tomorrow. So thank you very much for your patient listening. So hoping to have your association tomorrow so that we can discuss this katha further. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ki jai. Shri Madhurya Kadambini ki jai. Hare Krishna.